What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is iRate Reviews, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, break it down a little bit, and let you know whether it's something you should check out or not. So make sure you subscribe if you want to get more of these every week. To start off with, we're going to be talking about Marvel Legacy number 1. So Marvel Legacy number 1, I realize it's a little bit late for this kind of review. However, it's definitely something that I want to talk about in a lot of detail. It really sets up the next year or two of Marvel storytelling. And what it really does is it breaks down into 3 individual parts. One is Avengers BC, which is really dealing with the Avengers characters and the founding kind of icons of this Marvel history. Then we also deal with Loki and the Frost Giants, which deals with particular, gem or stone. And then we have all these other individual things that set up individual pieces of the actual stories. So we're going to break these down into individual parts, 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, and then probably do a big review video that's going to go over the 10 key points of Marvel Legacy number 1. Outside of the stories about Avengers 1 million BC and Loki and the Frost Giants, as well as the return of the Infinity Stone to the Marvel Universe, or at least one of the Infinity Stones to the Marvel Universe, one of the key prominent features of Marvel Legacy number 1 is the individual one-shot scenarios. One page of dedicated art dealing with a specific character. So when we come to our first one-shot, it's actually Chris Samnee's art, about Mark Waid and his run on new Steve Rogers Captain America, just titled Captain America, which starts with number 695. So this is going to show, or at least this insinuates, that Steve Rogers is currently on the run. He currently still feels a touch of shame about what happened with Hydra Cap, and he's out there trying to, kind of recapture himself and recapture the American kind of spirit that he had. Identify with the current America that he lives in, not just the idealistic society, that he grew up in and what he thought was the American ideal. So he's out there trying to reconnect with America so that way he can become a symbol again. But this isn't something that he's doing out in public. It's more like he's kind of in hiding until he feels the need, or he feels comfortable, or he feels like he's earned the possibility of getting back into the role of Captain America. In the next one shot, we actually see the Odin son. We see the art of Russell Dodderman, and what we see is a Thor that's, he is pissed off again. It's not necessarily a development of the character for Thor, after everything that's been going on in the mighty Thor. He's been part of this war of the Thors and all that kind of stuff, comes in to save the day, but we still find him, with an arm made out of Uru, sitting there drinking his, sorrows away. And the real key to this isn't necessarily the fact that, Thor Odinson still hasn't necessarily moved past that, even though he feels like he has in the main Marvel book, in the Mighty Thor book. It's about Magog. It's about the return of this indestructible force that is down, hell-bent on destroying Asgard and Asgardia at this point in time, and his return, which is going to lead into the death of Mighty Thor arc in Mighty Thor number 700. So that is where prominence kind of comes into that particular one-shot, as this seer god, looking into the future, sees the coming of Magog and suffocates and falls off the Rainbow Bridge. So it's kind of ridiculous in that respect. The next one deals with the inevitable disappearance of Tony Stark's comatose body. Either he woke up and he got out and he walked away, or somebody stole it in kind of service of a new task. And that could possibly be AI Tony Stark. If he's disappeared from Riri Williams and he's no longer at her side guiding her, it could, be something that's like that. He's taken his body so that way either he can disappear and go do something on his own, or it's something more insidious, I guess. Overall, it's not necessarily super surprising because Tony Stark never really left at this point in time. He's always been an AI in the Invincible Iron Man book, and they haven't really given Riri Williams a chance to breathe. But this is supposed to set up the greatest Tony Stark Iron Man arc ever, or the biggest, or whatever. That's in there. It's a bit of a yawner, if I'm going to be completely honest. Once we move away from Tony Stark, Iron Man, and Thor, we actually get into some other kind of characters. We see Deadpool kind of contemplating the actions that he took inside Secret Empire, and what that's really going to mean for his character. Are we going to see kind of a distancing of Wade Wilson from the wisecracking kind of anti-hero hero persona that he's had for the last few years, and back to the kind of more despicable Deadpool that he was before, this merc with a mouth that was ruthless and brutal when it came to it? I assume yes, based on the current titles that are going to be coming out in Marvel Legacy, but the real thing about this is that the art style in this panel is just super fun. You know, you can't have anything more Deadpool than sitting on a toilet contemplating life while he's getting shot full of holes without really a care in the world. Of course, that does lead into the next page where we see another combination of the Avengers 1 million BC in their current forms, and that would be Doctor Strange's Sorcerer Supreme, for now, and Iron Fist at this point in time. So not only are they kind of in New York defending the Sanctum Sanctorum, but we also see a callback to the story of Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn was trying to invade the Sanctum Sanctorum, seeking out power and a means to become the Green Goblin. And if you haven't read the Amazing Spider-Man run, well, it's just a single one-shot issue between Dan Slott and Greg Smallwood where he seeks out mystical powers and then eventually becomes a sorcerer in the vein of, Doctor Doom and that kind of stuff. It's pretty badass, and I would totally read a miniseries that is all about that, so I'm interested to see where Norman Osborn goes as far as his hunt for the magical, mystical powers that will turn him back into the Green Goblin. Next, we see Nadia Pym standing next to Jarvis as he kind of looks wistfully out into the back courtyard of Avengers Mansion and looks at the famous statue of all the founding Avengers members. And while we notice the change, Jarvis kind of does, but doesn't really pay any attention to it. Everything seems as it should be, which is where we see the new character of Voyager on the podium, in a place where it wasn't really, before. If you look at original images of the Avengers, the Avengers statue versus the ones where it currently is, you see that this is a person that was not necessarily meant on being there, which means that we're going to get some sort of reality warping factors in history. So where is this Voyager? Who is she? And how does she kind of come to become a member of the earliest Avengers? I guess we're going to find out. Then as we get closer to the end of the book, we actually see Jim Cheung take on the mantle of, the artist for the Fantastic Four, or at least the two members that are currently still on Earth. Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm's The Thing are standing on top of a tower. One can only assume it's the Baxter Building or something relatively close to it that was taken over by Parker Industries. And they kind of explore what the meaning of their legacy is and whether the world still needs these kind of characters. And Ben Grimm, in true Ben Grimm fashion, is like, of course, man, are you stupid? And he sends up a flare and calls out the symbol of the Fantastic Four. On the opposing page, you actually see the story of Black Panther, which is a super awesome callback to Secret Wars, where we now see on the planet Bast the intergalactic republic of Wakanda. So you have aliens and Wakandans living together on this advanced alien race planet. So that is just such a cool concept that I can't wait to see where Ta-Nehisi Coates makes his transition to go there, because it's just a great idea. It's just like, oh yeah, that's something that I want to read. I'm super pumped for Black Panther going into space. That sounds awesome. And then we do have more space as far as the next one-shot that we talk about, and that is really a return to Scar. It's a message that goes out to the Green Scar to return to the battle world where he earned the World War Hulk kind of moniker, that storyline. So we're going to see Amadeus Cho take up the space of Bruce Banner on this war world, on the planet Scar, as he's called back by his former allies to where he really became, well, a very different person at that point in time. Then after the reveal of Logan's resurrection, we, bop over to Jean Grey, who's going to... She doesn't really know. She's not really sure why she's at this, little, I want to say, monument to the former Wolverine, to Logan, who was encased in adamantium. But she knows that she's going to find something, and what she finds, while she doesn't necessarily expect this, it feels like it's needed. And, she says, welcome back, we missed you, as she stares at the empty adamantium carcass of the monument that was Logan before he escaped. So, she knows, not sure who else knows, but that's going to play an interesting part in the future of it. Not necessarily a huge deal, but a nice little nod to somebody else knowing about the existence of Wolverine. We also see other little one-shots like Gamora knowing that the Infinity Stone has returned as it kind of has escaped this case and is in, Logan's hands. And then we finish up with probably one of the most important things, and not only do we find out who the narrator is, but we get to see who they, what their ideas are. And what we see is Valeria Richards reaching her hand out into space, kind of mimicking this kind of galaxy or universe in the distance, with her brother Franklin. So we get Franklin and Valeria Richards out on an exploration mission commanded by, Reed and Sue, and the rest of the Future Foundation is there. Not necessarily in frame, but you can tell in the text that this is where all these, hyper-intelligent kids, the original Fantastic Four and their kids, where they are, and that they're still out there creating and exploring universes inside this expanding Marvel multiverse that has been the result of the Secret Wars conflict. And the thing is, Valeria pines for that time when she was home, and she knows where she'd rather be. Instead of exploring these new universes, the universe that she'd rather be exploring, her home, where she was, and what it is now after the conflict. So those are all the individual pieces, and I think that a lot of these are a little bit more exciting than some of the other major plot lines. While the Infinity Stone kind of concept is cool, it's a little bit, it overshadows the resurrection of Wolverine because I didn't really miss Wolverine. The Avengers 1 million BC didn't really have the kind of prominence in the story that I would have liked, but the kind of Celestial storyline tying in a big overarching plot, which is going to show, the destruction of the Marvel Universe again for like the 8th time at this point in time. But the return of the Fantastic Four, the setup for Marvel 2 and 1, the idea of Norman Osborn becoming a Sorcerer Supreme, or at least a master of the mystical arts, these are all interesting plot threads, especially when we've got Black Panther getting his own planet and his own intergalactic empire. So if we're talking about the most promising parts of Marvel Legacy #1, a number of these one-shots are definitely keys to where the future of Marvel storylines with the major characters are going to go. So it's definitely something that I would recommend just to get that little bit of insight. After I've gone over this, you don't really need to read it at this point in time, but it's got stuff in there to be excited for. So definitely check that out. Those are my thoughts on the Marvel Legacy one-shot sections, these individual breakdown pages, but I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything having to do with the world of comics.